Hi and welcome to today's video. Now, I'm not going to lie, there is not much love lost between me and this Matchline. It has proven to be quite the challenge, and if you remember from a previous video, it's already survived a trip to the dump. It was there in the boot of the car, looking quite sorry for itself. The guy that works at the tip, or one of the chaps that works at the tip, picked it up and said, oh, I'll put this one in the electrical recycling for you. And it was at that point I said, no, hang on a minute, I haven't decided what I'm doing with that one yet. And it had a stay of execution. So let's get it open and I'll show you what I was trying to do off camera. So I was trying to resolve a number of the problems that this unit has, such as the front VFD not displaying the hi-fi the hi-fi VU meters not working. And in doing that, this kind of happened. This is basically the deck. Now, this would have been fine for a few years. In fact, it was actually fine for nearly 40 years. But what subsequently happened is, as you can see, you have on the bottom here these glued or melted plastic pieces. These melted plastic pieces, if I remember what way it is, hook into, sorry, other way around, hook into this. And that basically makes up the loading tray arrangement. And what has happened over the years is it's become brittle. So when I tried to remove this to basically do something as simple as service this machine, I had a service kit for it. So I got the new spring, I got a new pinch roller, and I got a new idler. So I had all of that ready to go. I'd spent money on it, and it repays me with that disintegrating. Now, I can't hold it against it, it's an old deck. So, and I'll be honest, it hasn't been stored particularly well. As you can see, there's rust on there. The head is covered in oxidization, which happens to these particular decks if you keep them in an inappropriate location, like I did. So if you're going to store your video recorders, make sure you store them somewhere where it is dry and not particularly humid. So that's the problem I had. Where I stored it was dry, but it was at my last house, and at the last house we had these plastic sheds, and basically these plastic sheds would quite literally attract moisture. So you'd get an awful lot of moisture collecting in the shed over the winter period, and that took its toll on the deck itself. So as I say, I've got this other deck and I'm just going to open it and we're going to see what we actually have. We'll do a bit of a comparison, see which parts are the same, which parts are different. Most importantly, can we salvage the deck arrangement itself? So basically salvage the entire deck and swap over the parts that we need. Because that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to remove this so I could get to, this, so I could get to the idler. So this is the VR6860. This one is the VR6660. And what is the same so far? This board is different. So it has this let's zoom in a little bit. C1122. Different part number, so different part number, different part number. This board is... it looks similar, but I'm not going to say that it is the same. Power supply might actually be the same. Transformer might also be the same. So immediately we potentially have something that we can reuse. The basic deck does actually look pretty much identical. Obviously the head drum is different, so we will need to replace the head drum. Audio control heads. I'm going to be honest, they look the same. Which wouldn't surprise me. Actually, is this one... this looks like a stereo. Or is it? Or is that mono? No, that might be mono. Yeah, I think those are both... I think those are both mono. Which would make sense. Because later hi-fi machines didn't have stereo heads. It's only the very early hi-fi machines that had linear stereo and hi-fi stereo. So the deck looks the same. So the next question is, how do you get the deck out of the machine? Because it actually looks like the entire deck itself makes up the plastic moulding. So all of this, certainly this bit here, is part of the actual entire chassis of the machine itself. So that means that to transplant this into here, you would potentially have to remove, well, pretty much everything. You'd have to swap all of the boards. That is absolutely astonishing. So let's have a think about how this is going to work. So you've got the metal deck assembly here, which does look like it is potentially interchangeable. I've actually just discovered another treat at the back here. That's the new idler. So the idler that was in there is actually the old one. The pinch roller I haven't replaced yet. This would have gone into here. And that would have basically been your idlers. You've got this spring arrangement here that keeps it in place, by the looks of it. I think there's another part that's potentially missing off that. Yeah, that is interesting. I'm actually interested to see if this one powers up. So I think before we do anything destructive, let's grab this. And let's see about popping a plug onto it. There. So, bear with me, I'll be right back. Here we go. Certainly makes some interesting noises. No front display. No eject. No anything actually. All seems relatively quiet. It's not exactly trying to explode in my face, so that's a good sign. But it does seem to suggest that there are some issues with this deck, which is obviously why it was on eBay for £3. Let's try that again. So off, on, off again. You got me intrigued. There's something obviously sticking in the mechanism. Doesn't surprise me if the front display isn't working. That seems to be, if this one's anything to go by, that seems to be a common issue. They use those light blue Philips electrolytic capacitors, which have the really weird ratings. I'll show you an example of one. So there's one there. They look like, I'll be honest, they actually look like, zoom into it a bit. Oops, wrong button. It's again the wrong button. Correct button. They look like resistors. You can replace them with normal upright electrolytics, but you just have to be a bit creative with the leg arrangement. This one might be a bit more difficult because it's quite a long one. Some of them, they use these in a vertical arrangement. They've actually kept one of the legs a bit longer. So let's get this off. But yeah, those light blue electrolytics have got this habit of, well, certainly at this age, of being either open circuit or having absolutely no kind of value whatsoever. Usually open circuit, to be honest. So this is the, you could say it's the literal nightmare before Christmas, because this is being filmed before Christmas. But this is what we were looking at a couple of years ago. Actually, not a couple of years ago. Was it this year? I can't remember now, but I think it was this year I was looking at the Matchline. But it's this that basically controls the whole mechanism. You've got this huge gear. You have this arm, which is then turned by this motor here. And that, in doing so, controls pretty much all of the deck functions. So I'm just spinning this one back. So I think when it gets to this position, it's pretty much fully loaded. Let's just have a quick look at fully laced. Yeah, you can see fully laced. So let's monitor activities from this side. See what it's getting itself trapped on. So if we just power it up. Something is trying to spin. So let's eject. Can't even tell what motor is spinning. Let's have a look at the other side. So that's just unlaced. That has actually put that back to there. And the problem is it can't get past this stage. So this stage, if you go back a bit further, is the point where, if I remember rightly, yep, that's the point where it brings the cassette cradle, up and back into its unloaded position. And this is disgusting. All the grease is dried out and it feels horrible. And it's gone into a lockout because it can't get that cradle out. What I did with the other one, this one, is I re-greased all of this, and this was working wonderfully. I think it was this motor that was trying to spin. And it was working rather well. There we go. So, if you look at it now, that's now in its correct position. So if I unplug it, plug it back in, that's weird, it's automatically trying to load the cassette. And now we've got a clock display. So the clock display is in a cooler colour than my one. Look at that. This one, when it's on, is blue. This one was a cool orange colour. And now it's actually given us nothing. And then it goes into a shutdown state. So let's see if we can apply some power to that motor just to get it to spin back a bit. So I've got this little AC to DC converter which outputs up to 12 volts. So to save me having to spin the motor back manually, let's see if we can kind of hotwire it a little bit. so bear with me. So let's just give that a quick go. So this will load, as you can see. This will unload, reverse the polarity, which is exactly what the Syscon does to the motor, or Mechacon, rather. And it's a bit sticky, but it does work. There isn't enough current on this to drive the motor all the way, because that does require quite a bit of an effort to turn it. But I haven't had to turn it the whole way with my finger, so that's actually saved a bit of time. And then you are unloaded. There we go. It's actually now off, so I can pop that over out the way. Unplug it, just to be safe. Now we can start having a look at the other side of this, because we should now be in a position where this is up and out of the way, and we can actually see what goes on as regards this particular deck. You can also have a look at this front panel. So it looks like they use the same front panel for different machines in the model range, which would make sense. But you just have a lot of items which are left unsoldered at the factory. So this section here would be for the whole, well, would be for this, effectively. You've got that there for the volume control. That there for your level control, that for your headphones. So this does suggest that to a certain extent these machines are compatible. You could at a pinch actually use this entire board, as long as you solder on the right components. You could probably use this entire board in there, which is quite handy if you break the board on this one. So that's good to know. That's quite a nice feature. They have used the same board. Also means I could probably borrow this way cooler VFD, which has got the cooler colours. So that leads us to the ultimate question. What can I do about this? Can I transfer this into there without completely destroying it the way that I did previously with the other one? The answer to that is an emphatic I don't know. Because it does seem quite integral to the actual machine itself. And therein lies the problem. And this is the problem I had with the other one, because it was nigh on impossible to remove that. And I'm wondering if there is a way it can be done underneath, but I don't think there is, because a lot of this actually makes up the deck itself. So this basically plastic assembly. Hang on a minute. I don't believe it. Okay. Okay, it's a separate assembly. Alright, well that makes life a lot easier. That means we can unplug this, or just pull it off completely. Okay, unplug this. I honestly thought that was part of the actual plastic assembly of the whole deck itself. I thought this was integral to the chassis, but no, it's a separate plug-in module. And as you can see, there are many signal wires going to various boards. So we've got one here. So it looks like they've actually used a very similar arrangement to the Video 2000 decks that I've been working on. And in the Video 2000 decks, the whole deck assembly is removable. Certainly in the older decks, like the that one there I've got hiding down there. This one that I've got hiding here, which I need to repair the relays on the deck. But it looks like they've used a similar setup for that, so that basically the deck itself is interchangeable, so you can actually remove the whole deck. Now that's handy, because it means potentially that we have a lot less work to do. Also means that we can probably reuse a lot of this one in the other one. So I'm just going to get this board out of the way. So there we go. Seems that in sort of a few years between the 2022 and this deck, Philips have made their circuit print look less like a design and technology project at GCSE and more like a professional company producing professional equipment. Right. I have no clue what this board is on the back, but seeing as almost everything goes to it, I would hazard a guess that it's probably a head amplifier board. Again, judging by the fact that this mess of wires actually leads to here, means that probably this is what I'm looking for. There we go, off you come. So I'm not being too careful with removing this one, because we're going to be transferring a lot of what's on the deck on the hi-fi deck onto this deck. So I'm not too concerned if I'm not remembering exactly where all of these wires go, because it's not going to be detrimental. There you go. So that's this board. This is a, I think it's a head amp board, seeing as a lot of head style shielded cables do go into it. There you go. So that's that one out the way. That leaves you with a very empty looking deck, actually. So what have I got here? This is... Have Philips been kind enough to tell us what it is? No, for that you would need a circuit diagram. However, we do have some part numbers which we can compare. So 31203 3718 0 3112 203 37180. These are actually the same boards, which is interesting. So it looks like there's been a revision. Quite possible that is newer than that. Same part number, but you've got this weird affair going on here with some hastily applied fly leads. So there's probably been an in-service revision which was hastily introduced to the production line in the form of this rather shonky arrangement. I wonder if there are, if you have a look at there, so there. So would approximately be there. Yeah, you don't even have the tracks for it on this one. You compare the two, there's the two there. You don't have the tracks for it. So that really does seem to suggest that this one might be a later revision. So 860 30774. Oh, look at that. There's actually, is there two part numbers on that one? So 37180, 30773, 30774. So it's possible that is a later revision, but the same basic board. However, we're not going to tempt fate. We're going to leave this as it is. Now, impressively, this deck actually just seemed to come out. And do you know what I think holds it in? These three screws. Which is quite a surprise, actually. So I didn't think that it was that simple. Wrong button, just want to zoom out. Yeah, I didn't think it was that simple. So I didn't think that literally the whole machine was just held in by those three screws. I mean, that would be astonishing if it is. So let's just pop this kind of back together. Probably find now that that base panel won't actually screw in anymore because it's missing whatever is required to screw into it. So just do that. There we go. Ooh, comedic. Interesting, yeah. So it is literally held in with those 3 screws, which I honestly didn't know. So that means that this should actually come out in a similar way. So this whole deck would lift out by just removing those 3 screws. Yeah, I was not expecting that. I'm going to be honest. Not expecting that at all. Now, because of the problems we seem to have with this other deck, I'm going to transfer as much of the electrical arrangements over. So this here, this might be my head amp actually, judging by the fact that everything comes out of it onto these various boards. So that board actually, instead of a head amp board, may actually be a processing board of some description. What it actually processes, is it chrominance or luminance? I'm not sure, but it is some kind of processing board. Quite obviously a later revision. This one, we look at that and do a part number comparison. WD540, WD540, that's the same. So these 2 boards are identical, so that's good. That is something. Let's do a comparison of these compared to this one. So I want to try and swap as much over as possible. That's going to be the challenge. Now, the other challenge is, how do you service it? So you got this, you want to basically plonk into here. How do you get to it? Because you can't easily pop out this cradle. And even if you do try popping out the cradle, you, as I discovered, end up pretty much destroying the whole machine. So for the moment, I am just going to have to leave this idler in place, because there does not appear to be an easy way to change it up. Now, sorry, prolonged silence, I'm just looking at this. Now, what's the best way to do this? Do we keep this in situ as much as possible, or do we take this out as well and then swap everything over? I think we take this out and swap everything over without the machines on the bench. So there are a number of items that we do need to remove. The first thing I think we're going to do is, if we pop these 3 screws out, that should, as we noticed earlier, release the whole deck. So may as well start on that one. that makes up the base of that. So that would go somehow into there. I'm actually wondering if you have to remove the motor itself, but that's not exactly easy to do because you've got this arm in the way and these two screws there. So I wonder if that's how you service it, by removing the motor rather than trying to remove the entire top of the deck, which may not be user serviceable as I discovered. So if I do that, does that now mean that this is suddenly available to us? No, so there's still something holding this in, and it's this clip here. So let's pop this out. And this one. There we go. That clip moves to one side. And there's still something holding this in. And it is, what is holding it back? I need to be careful with this because I don't want to... Oh, hang on a minute. I was about to say I need to be careful with this because I don't want to break anything, and then I remembered that this deck is actually, as in the deck mechanism is totaled anyway, so does it really matter? Plump. There we are, so that's your deck out. And now you need to unhook the various bits holding it in place. So if we start off with these signal cables. And out of there. There you go. Out of there. Like so. So that's that. Then you have all of these, which actually go to this board at the back. That's why I removed this front board on the other one. And you know what? I'm probably going to do the same here because it does give you quite a good bit of access to the board behind it. There's only literally a few connectors holding it in. Interestingly, that one's actually soldered to the back of that. Excuse me. So now you have all of this to move out the way. So you've got these two top connectors here. So there's the black and green. So they will come over like so. That just separates that. And then you've got this connector on here. And then you've got this blue one down here. And that separates that. So now you have access to this connector, which might be an audio connector actually. But I'm going to be honest, this machine has so many similar connectors, it's actually quite hard to differentiate. Also made more difficult by the fact that the board itself doesn't have any kind of... Actually, this board could be audio, to be perfectly honest with you, because there's an audio connector here at the back. So there. Again, is it an audio connector? I don't know. I don't think it is actually. This could be another head signal on, seeing as we've got the four. We've got 4 heads on this. We got audio, but do we have 4 video heads? I'm not sure. Let's get these out of the way. That seems to be one extra cable that the other deck doesn't have. And that's probably for the hi-fi portion of this arrangement, which would make sense actually. So I would think these 2 image processing, these 2 audio processing, this one probably power distribution, main power supply, and then you've got, actually sorry, I lied that, tuner and signal. This one has a delay line on it, so that could actually be video. One of these has got to be Syscon in that case, and Mechacon. It could be these 2 at the back actually. Just completely rearranging my initial thought process. But from a logical perspective, that would make sense, that you've got a lot of the signal wires going into Syscon and Mechacon first. Then you've got this wire down here. This is the one that differs actually on this deck. So the other deck doesn't actually have this chunky wire here. That, I think, is probably to do with the hi-fi stage. So if I just separate a lot of these wires, I should now be able to see what is still attached, what isn't attached. And what we can remove. And also what can stay in place. So there's something else connecting this one, and it's down here. It's that one that's glued. There we go. And there you go, that's actually removed. So the next thing we need to do, so I'll just put this back into place, just so we don't lose it. There you go. Next thing we're going to do is just put this kind of back together-ish. There we go. That's the one. Excuse me. That's the other one. Now these two can go and move to one side. Just put the screws into this little bag, which has got the spring in it. There we go. So that's the spring for the idler. Actually, these little screws as well can go in there. There we go. Right, let's clear up this space at the edge of the desk, and there we go. They can move out the way. So now we've got the two decks. Hi-Fi deck, non-Hi-Fi deck. What we need to do is swap pretty much everything from the Hi-Fi deck onto the non-Hi-Fi deck. Let's start with the very simple replacement of the flap on the front. Flap replace. Next one is the head assembly. So we will at least remove the head on this one. So So unfortunately I've got a few other things to be getting on with, non-hobby related, so I'm going to need to finish up in a minute until next time. But we will at least see what's involved with removing the head itself, the head assembly. There you go, so that's out of the way. And that does sort of come out, but then you've got probably underneath all of those wires, connectors and everything else that goes on with it. So we've got, interestingly, only one wire going to the head? Seriously? Oh yeah, it might be because that's a more basic head. So this one has got only one wire going to the head drum. How is it working then? That makes no sense. I am very confused. Let's not dwell on that confusion. Let's just get this out of the way. So that needs snipping off. Oh yeah, we need this little board off there as well, because we're going to be using the one on the other deck. I will compare part numbers actually to see if they are the same before, because there's no discrete components on there, it literally just is a connector board. So if it's the same, we can get away with using it. That's out of the way. So this is the load motor. That's obviously going to go to Mechacon. This is a head position sensor. That's probably for the auto tracking. These machines are quite unusual for VHS decks in the fact that they have auto tracking, which kind of makes sense because that was a Philips Video 2000 thing. And something that they've carried over into these early VHS decks. There we go, so that's that out of the way, which means I can unravel the rest of these. So one of them is the capstan motor. That's obviously going to go to Syscon. And then you've got the head assembly itself, which has this single wire going into this shielded unit. And said single wire into said shielded unit. Does actually potentially mean that said shielded unit has to come away with the head as well. That is your head signal wire. So that goes into here. That must be the head amp. So it would seem that the head amp is actually tied with the head. So during normal servicing you would probably just unsolder those there if you were going to replace the entire drum assembly. But because I'm swapping entire components over, I need to remove this board, or this little chassis as well. So get that out of the way, and then once we get the other one off, we can actually compare just how different they actually are. My guess would be the other one would probably have more connectors. We do have some of those shitty blue, sorry I swore, we do have some of those rubbish blue Philips capacitors in there with their weird ratings. 15 microfarads at 16 volts, the world's strangest farad versus voltage combo. I don't quite know why Philips went for these weird ratings, but they did. So that's that, and that's that, and that is there. So that's now empty, and just looking at these other bits and pieces that we might need to replace. I think one of these might be an end sensor. It's got a video lamp as well. That's going through here. And then that's disappearing off up into here somewhere. This just looks like a connector board, so I think I'm going to leave that in place, because removing that would probably be more of a nightmare than not removing it. So that can stay put for the moment. This actually plugs into here, I think, so that can stay plugged in as well. So that's the head out the way. Now the next question is, do we have a part number on this audio head? I'll probably directly compare solder joints on it and see if it's the same board, see if it's the same physical head, and it looks like it is. There does not appear to be any difference on that at all. They both have an F1 marker on them as well, so I think they're the same part. That means that we should just have to remove the video head. I think the rest of it is pretty much identical. The other problem where it didn't seem to be loading properly, I'm wondering if it's either a dirty sensor or if it was actually a problem with the other machine itself. But that is going to be a mystery for next time, because I've got some other bits and pieces to be getting on with, but I've achieved what I wanted to achieve today, which is to get both decks out and actually have a look at what makes those decks work, which is quite interesting. And this is going to be very much a project that, I'm going to be honest, if it doesn't work, it goes in the bin. This really is the last chance for this one. But anyway, that actually does bring us quite nicely to the end of today's video. I'd like to thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Obviously, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe. Why not check out some of my other videos as well? I don't just play around with video recorders, I play around with televisions and cars as well, to a certain degree. And I will see you all again very soon. Thank you very much for watching, and take care.